Hi everyone. I made a video, I think it was last year or the year before, and it was titled How Do 200 Babies a Year Go Missing from UK Care? And unfortunately, for some reason, although the sound levels were okay when I made the video, it gets uploaded onto YouTube and the sound is very low. And so I'm doing a remake of that video and a shorter version because it was quite a long video. So I'm focusing on children that are being taken off their parents and taken into state care, which is unfortunately necessary in a society where children are suffering every kind of abuse in the family home, or they're at risk in the family home. But it gets very disturbing when you realise that all these childcare services have been privatised. They are corporate entities. They sell shares. You can buy shares in Britain's social childcare services. You can be a corporation like G4S and run children's homes in Britain and receive up to £200,000 a year per child in your care. If you're a social services corporation, you can receive, between £15 or £800 a week for every child on your books. If you're a foster carer taking in a child that has been allegedly rescued from the family home on grounds of a future emotional risk, that's when it gets serious. When you're looking at people making profits out of identifying a future emotional risk in the family home. And that can include poverty. It can include being judged a neglectful parent because you're unable to afford to adequately care for your child according to whatever standards those particular social workers have decided to measure you by. So, poverty can be enough to say somebody's a future emotional risk to their child. If, say, for example, you've become severely depressed and they're taking children away from parents permanently, and especially babies, they take newborn babies from mothers who've been diagnosed with postnatal depression. Single mothers especially, they focus on. And it is really, really disturbing when those babies go missing. Now, this was published in 2015, and it's discussing a report that went through to March 31st, 2013. So goodness knows how bad it is now. I've said on average 200 plus babies go missing from care every year. Okay, because the figures here, we have to take into account that not all the care homes that were contacted, the care providers that were contacted, actually responded to the study. And but basically, analysis of data shared with Newsweek shows that, according to the Department of Education statistics for the year ending March 31st, 2013, around 1,910 children legally defined as under the age of 18 left the care system in England for unknown reasons, including 180 babies under the age of 1. In the same period, in 2012, about 260 children left the system for unknown reasons, including 160 babies. Detailed figures for 2014 are not yet available, and I've never seen them, and I've never seen any more since. When children officially leave the care system, they are logged by the authorities in categories providing the reason for their withdrawal. These categories include children who were adopted, return to parents or family taken into foster care, those who have grown out of care and those who are deceased. But children who don't fall into these categories are placed into a category that the Department for Education simply labels other, also known as E8. It's disgraceful, says Phil Frampton, the former National Care of the Care Leavers Association. It is clear that the government and local authorities don't take seriously their responsibilities for young people in their care. It is quite likely these children have fallen into the hands of sexual exploiters. They may well have been trafficked. Who knows what's happened to these children? Some of these young people who go missing end up murdered. Some of the children murdered by Fred West were young people who had gone missing from care homes. The figures come amid damning claims over the industrial scale of child sex abuse occurring in some parts of the UK. The latest harrowing findings, published in a report by Oxfordshire Safeguarding Children Board this week, showed that up to 370 girls may have been the victims of sexual exploitation across the country over the past 15 years, some of whom were in council care. In 2012, it came to light that some 1,400 children, some of whom lived in care homes, were abused in Rotherham, Northern England, by gangs of predominantly Asian men. Which, we need to accept once and for all that the majority of child abusers in Britain are not Asian men. That's a fact. And, to prove it, just get onto YouTube, type in pedo hunters and have a look at the people they managed to entrap. Now, it is very, very, very serious when children are going missing from care and all that happens is get a label other slapped on them. I mean, a cared for child in Britain is a child at very, very high risk, and that has to be a serious concern for the British public. To think that cared for children are even more at risk than children in a family home. Because apparently a cared for child can just go missing and nobody answerable. Nobody really asking any questions. Whereas if a child suddenly goes missing from a family home, people are going to notice, aren't they? People are going to be asking questions. But when a child goes missing from care, there's no questions asked. I mean, how do 180 babies under the age of 1 go missing from care? Not because they were given to a foster carer or adopted, but because they fall into that category, other, E8. What other reason? What reason is there for babies disappearing from care? Why aren't people asking this question in Britain? I don't understand how a population can be so casual about this. How people can be so concerned about immigrants, but we're not bothered about our children that are being taken off people for very spurious reasons sometimes. Is a future emotional risk a reason to take a child from otherwise loving parents? To drag a child screaming from a family home on the grounds that, the mum's got a learning difficulty? Or dad's a bit depressed now. Why not invest some money into them and give them family support? It would actually be cheaper, a lot cheaper on the public purse to be providing family support where children are deemed at a future emotional risk, rather than the vast amounts of money being drained from the public purse into these corporations that then funnel it all away in some offshore tax haven. And meanwhile, children are then placed at even higher risk in care. And it seems, this I've shared so many times, and this is from 2016, child trafficking victims disappearing from UK care at an alarming rate. Britain receives thousands of trafficked children every year. It's amazing, actually, how few are identified. And of those that are identified and taken into care, they're disappearing. And the excuse given here, they're trying to give here, is that they all run away back to their traffickers. But even if you could say that for, even half the children, if they had run away to their traffickers, are we seriously expected to believe that every single child, identified trafficked child that gets taken into care, runs back to their traffickers? That the vast majority of them run back to their traffickers? And for how many of these children that are trafficked, how many prosecutions? We never hear of it. How many times have we, the British public, seen headlines of gangs of people or people being charged, prosecuted, on trial, found guilty for child trafficking? When have we ever seen it? I have yet to see headline news for child traffickers. A country that's receiving thousands of child traffickers, thousands of trafficked children every year. That's the official figures, thousands. But where are the prosecutions then of all the child traffickers? It's something that's being kept quiet. It's something that's being kept hushed up. It's our children. A species, our children, humanity. What are we doing? What are we doing? To ignore things like this, to ignore stuff like this. According to Wiltshire Police, who've done, a 2-3 year long investigation into allegations against Edward Heath, after interviewing people from up and down the country, have come to the conclusion that they are 120% certain that Edward Heath was a paedophile, known among his victims as the Claws, because he liked to wear a claw or claws when he was abusing children. According to the evidence that I've witnessed through various investigations that have been going on, it appears that, a lot of his victims were procured from children's homes by the likes of Jimmy Savile. So, he was Britain's Prime Minister. We know for a fact Margaret Thatcher covered up for him, as did David Cameron and various other ministers. We know that this is a cross-party thing. It's not an exclusively Tory problem. This problem of paedophilia runs rife through every social division. For paedophiles, there are no social divides. And the people that are involved in these crime syndicates, they're all in it for various reasons. Either they enjoy abusing children, either they're sadists, either they're fulfilling some sexual pseudo sort of Satanist ideologies, whether it's for drugs or just plain profits, money, or whether it's for getting information on people to use as leverage and then pushing them into positions of power so they'll protect more paedophiles until Britain becomes a country that's governed by sadists. Because that's what people who take pleasure from abusing a child, you've got to be a sadist. It isn't sex. It's sadism. It's making a child suffer. Because a child doesn't understand about sex, isn't able to consent. They're not developed. They're not ready for sex yet. That's why they're a child. Whether that be physically or even just emotionally, psychologically. Now, It is a very, very serious matter to find out that Wiltshire police are 120% certain that an ex-Prime Minister of Britain, even while he was Prime Minister, was abusing children. And nothing's been done about it. And it's all been hushed up. And that we're a nation which London is cited child abuse capital of the world. We're a nation that's receiving thousands of trafficked children every year. We're a nation that has set private corporations, global corporations like G4S, were running children's homes in Britain. This is a corporation that incarcerates children on behalf of Israel. Incarcerates Palestinian children. Running children's homes in Britain, getting £200,000 a year out of the public purse for every child in their care. I know, I've done the research, I've written the reports, I've sent them to the House of Lords. Nobody's bothered. Nobody's bothered about the babies that go missing, the babies that are being taken off mothers in the hospitals. There's women who've had 10 children taken off them because they get one child taken off them because they're identified as a risk. They've got a learning difficulty, or they had postnatal depression, and then every time they get pregnant, social services come and take the baby off them. So what do? They go out and get pregnant again because they're going to keep that one. But every time, social services will come and take the baby off them. This is what's happening in Britain. There's money in it. Suddenly, parents going through a bit of a messy divorce, all the children can be taken away. They're all at a future emotional risk. These things are happening. And it is time we stop brushing it under the rug. And what happens? 2 babies that have gone missing from care. 160 babies, 180 babies. And that is the results from research studies in which most of the, many of the care homes, care providers didn't even participate because they didn't have the records. They don't keep records. And it's even stated here that half the people that were contacted for this, the report that's shared here in The Guardian, many of the authorities didn't keep records of whether children were trafficked or not. I mean, isn't that important? You're providing care for a child. Shouldn't you know if that child's been trafficked or not? Is it feasible to just assume that all the children disappearing from care are just running back to their traffickers? And not ask any questions about, well, if the child is able to run back to their traffickers, then why weren't the police able to arrest their traffickers? So obviously not enough is being done to actually prosecute the people that are trafficking children. Because otherwise, how could the trafficked children that land in care run away to their traffickers if police were doing their job? What job are the police doing in Britain right now? Protecting Boris Johnson and his hard-right fascism? I mean, I am outraged. I am so disgusted, and these are the EU child protection directives that have never been fully implemented by Britain. Britain children still aren't benefiting from EU child protection directives that work like a legal machine to protect children and prevent crimes against children and arrest and prosecute suspects. And that's why the paedophiles hate the EU. The paedophiles dread these being fully implemented in Britain. It's about time the people of Britain started thinking about the next generation. Because, you know, that to me is what an intelligent species does. It cares about the next generation. You know, I look at the birds in the trees, even foxes. I look at how they spend their whole lives caring for the next generation, raising their young. The suffering and struggling they go through. And I look at humanity. It's absolutely disgusting. It is disgusting. We haven't even got the sense of meerkats. Even meerkats show more attention to their children. As a species. What are we doing as a species? And we're coming out of the EU. What are these? Is this rule from Brussels? We don't want to protect our children with rule from Brussels. Instead, we'll just leave them. We'll just leave them to the likes of our next Prime Minister. Maybe. So, you know, on average, we can easily say by now 200 plus babies under the age of 1 are going missing from UK care each year. And where are they going? Whose hands are they landing into? It's serious, people. We cannot ignore this anymore. We just can't. And I am seriously concerned for this country. Well, for the children of the country. The adults, I just don't know where you're at. I never have, actually. I am a CSA survivor. And I can't tell you how devastating it was to realise that nobody was going to prosecute my father for the horrific things he did to me and my mum and my brothers and sisters. You know, that nobody is bothered. That instead, you know, I'm the one that lives a lifetime of a judgment, that has to live with complex PTSD, gets no help. Nothing there. They don't, go to see my GP. My GP doesn't understand what chronic complex PTSD is or how it affects my health. It's been a learning curve for my GP. How's that? You know, living in a society that, one, not only ignores the abuse that you suffered and leaves the abusers to walk free, but then doesn't even understand the damages that you've suffered and can provide you no adequate help to deal with it. But instead will constantly blame you for not coming up to scratch and not being good enough and not being this and not being that and for being too emotional. Too emotional. This country is not emotional enough, okay? And perhaps it is down to people like me who do live with heightened awareness and an increased capacity for feeling emotion. So that we express it and feed it back to you. Because look, this is you disconnected people. You're disconnected from reality. If you're not focusing on the health and safety of your children as a collective, you've lost the plot already. You've lost the plot. And only a nation of people who've lost the plot completely could have just voted Brexit, for example. Only a nation who've lost the plot could have voted in this set of criminal fascist cabal back into number 10. Only a nation that's completely lost the plot could do that. And if we didn't vote them in, then only a nation who's lost the plot could sit there and tolerate the lawful suspicion that tells us it was a rigged election. Whichever way you look at it, Britain has lost the plot. And it's about time we picked up. And where we start, you start with the children. You hold the hands of the little child and you look at them and you think about their future. And you think about their rights. And you think about the dangers and risks they are facing right now. And even the worst risk in the hands of the very people that they are, we're handing them over to these people to protect them. To protect them. This is the risk they suffer. that it is as easy for a child in care to go missing as it is for somebody to steal a bottle of milk off someone's doorsteps. The police aren't going to investigate. Nobody's bothered. The child's gone missing. It was a number in a book. Oh, let's mark it E8 or other.